other way you could shift your strategy is rather than going after those highly targeted ads, you could start saying, well, for Meta, Instagram, and Facebook, I'm going to focus on brand awareness and just using it like you would Google Display or something like that, just to focus on that brand awareness.
Right, knowing that the ads are not going to convert. In other words, they're not going to necessarily one-to-one move product for you, but they are going to get your name out there. So when someone later is doing a search or it pops in their head, whatever the case may be, they think of you. You know, that's sort of the idea of billboards too. It's oh yeah, that place when I need them, and then they go to your website.
Which just stinks because the whole point of ads on digital is so that you can dive into these metrics, and when you can't, like, that just kind of defeats the purpose. Hey there, welcome to the Dr. Marketing Tips Show. I am Jennifer.
And I'm Corey.
And today we're going to talk to you about a change that Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, has made to their advertising policies that are going to take effect in January of 2025, and they're going to affect you as a healthcare provider.
Yeah, so Meta is restricting health-related data, specifically for ads on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, you know, all the big Meta products. And so what that means is if you are running ads on any of those platforms, some of the ways that you're able to target starting in January, you now can no longer use. So this is in response to some scrutiny from the FTC, and you know, there's always a little bit of a kerfuffle around health data and sensitivity and PHI, and so I think what's happening is Meta, in response to this, is trying to say, wait, let's just change and be on the safe side. And so the downstream kind of effect of that is that when you go to set up your next ad campaign, you are not going to be able to target to the extent that you can target as of this recording on December 17th.
And I don't know that this affects everybody per se, but I do think it's going to affect those that are doing injections. If you're doing, you know, so Botox, acne, anything cash-based, vitamins, it's going to affect you. And then we may see kind of a downstream effect as it relates to other specialties, more like ortho, ENT, you know, vascular. We could see it in there too. Because we do have sometimes where ads are getting denied, and we're like, what the heck are they denied for? Especially in the mental health space.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes it seems like, because it's all set up through an algorithm and a bot and everything, and sometimes it seems like you cannot get an ad through, and you got to change one word or change the art or whatever, and then that does it. Other times you're totally fine. But I think, you know, if you're in the specialty pharmacy, compounding pharmacy kind of arena, or you're a practice that is selling, you know, some like IV therapy and things like that, and you're running ads specific to those, you're going to have a harder time trying to find the target and get those ads through. And so the solution is probably going to be to zoom out and go a little bit more top of funnel, because I think what's happening is they're going to make it very murky when you get into the mid and low funnel, meaning someone that's closer to making a decision. Maybe they've got something in a shopping cart on your website, if you can order online for one of these products, or you know, if you're using some tracking data to see what some of their other interests may be, there's a chance that's going to go away. We don't know for sure. So what that means is you're going to just have to sort of cast a wider net and rely on essentially the Meta AI, because that's what they're going to do to replace this, and hope that it's right and you're going to reach the right people.
Do you think that it's going to shift advertisers out of Meta in this area and more into kind of intent-based search?
I think so, because the money still is going to need to get spent somewhere. You know, for better or for worse, you are going to need to still reach the patients, and if you can't target the same way, you're going to find out maybe these ads are less effective, so you can go toward like a search-based model and put more dollars over there, because then you know the person is saying, I need a vitamin supplement. And so it may make sense to kind of shift away from these specific kind of mid to low tier funnel type of ads, and maybe you just do general awareness over on Meta, and then over on the search side, you kind of beef up that budget.
It'll be interesting too, because even on the search side, we have some limitations as it relates to things that are maybe not FDA approved or they're seen as exploratory. So like even as an example, stem cell, we're still dealing with not being able to market stem cell on pages for orthopedic surgeons. Instead, we're having to either have a total separate domain or just not market stem cell at all.
Yeah, and it's something similar to this also kind of happened a couple years ago with Apple, where Apple started to restrict data to Meta, and so Meta's solution was, outside of taking out like a full page ad in the Wall Street Journal to say this is bad for business, they also basically tried to supplement that with their own AI to say, well, we can't really get that data, but we can approximate it and create essentially a pool of people for you. And I think, again, we don't know, but I think that's what they're going to try and do here too, is they're going to say, well, we can't give you the specifics, so you can't go and say, I want to target someone who's 45 to 55 and works out 3 times a week and drives a Tesla and whatever you could do before to say, essentially, they're going to make this much money, they may be interested in my product. I think what's going to happen is Meta's going to say, do you want someone who's active and affluent? And you would just click yes. And you actually have no control over what's in that category. Meta's going to do that. And maybe that's better, maybe that's worse. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the opportunities then, because I think that there are a couple opportunities, as always. And if you're listening to the show or you're watching it on YouTube, and maybe there's a couple things that you can do to get in front of your competitors. And at the same time, if you're working with an agency, ask that agency what they're going to do to help you get there. Because if you're putting your dollars into Meta, and it's moving product for you or helping you grow the practice, then we need to start paying attention to what else we might do. I think one opportunity is as you're telling your story through those ads, you might have to cast a wider net. So now might be a good time to start looking at the messages that you're running on the ads to figure out what it is that's going to help you convert as you have to cast that wider net.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think that there's definitely still some ambiguity in terms of what's going to be allowed and not allowed and how certain products are going to be categorized. And maybe one supplement you have is going to be totally fine and this other one for some reason totally blocked. So like you're saying, it may make sense to kind of look at what's actually the messaging for this sort of wider net, and are you just trying to get your name out there, or are you trying to say like you are the trusted source for custom blended IV kits or whatever the case may be, because you may have to go that general route versus saying we have a specific kit for X, Y, and Z.
Yep, and another opportunity could be maybe it's time to look at other platforms. TikTok as a search engine, there's great strides there, and looking at Snapchat,
assuming they're not banned.
Assuming they're not banned. But even if they're banned, somebody's going to come in. The market's too large.
Absolutely.
But now might be a good time to start looking at those other platforms who don't have the same level of restriction.
Yeah, or they're either the same level of restriction, or they may just have because again, this is somewhat ambiguous, so they may have a different set as to what
a different kind of restriction, different compliance issues.
Yeah, exactly. They can just classify something differently, and maybe that's a spot to kind of funnel the budget. Knowing that it's not a long-term solution, but if you're relying on Meta to move a specific product, now you're not able to do that. Maybe there's not enough awareness to go to the search-based area, so it may make sense to go to X. Less scrutiny, less regulation there.
Yeah, definitely.
Potentially.
No, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, it's true. So if you go there, you can get the ad out. You can essentially say whatever you want. So that's an option. Obviously, the audience is going to be a little different. But again, for your specific practice and your product, it may work.
What about changing your approach as it relates to going after that first-party data? Because first-party data gives you the chance to gather the info yourself and then change your marketing approach.
Yeah, that's a great point. So again, if you own the data, so if they're a part of your email newsletter or whatever, then the rules are different because they subscribe to your list. You can market to them, how you want, assuming that PHI is still protected, of course. But to do that, I'll back up to what we were saying earlier about just general awareness. So I think that obviously there's still a place and a time for advertising on Meta. And although the message may shift, you could still advertise on the platform, focus on general awareness when they get to your website, or maybe they're filling out a form on your ad. And that is to sign up for a newsletter so you own that first party data.
That's right.
So it's a shift in the strategy, but you're not necessarily shifting the budget. It just depends.
Well, another way you could shift your strategy is rather than going after those highly targeted ads, you could start saying, well, for Meta, Instagram, and Facebook, I'm going to focus on brand awareness and just using it like you would Google Display or something like that, just to focus on that brand awareness.
Right, knowing that the ads are not going to convert. In other words, they're not going to necessarily one-to-one move product for you, but they are going to get your name out there. So when someone later is doing a search or it pops in their head, whatever the case may be, they think of you. You know, that's sort of the idea of billboards too. It's oh yeah, that place when I need them, and then they go to your website.
Which just stinks because the whole point of ads on digital is so that you can dive into these metrics, and when you can't, like that just kind of defeats the purpose. So let's talk about specifics that you might be able to take back, whether it's looking at your own campaigns or looking at having those conversations with the agency that might rep you. I think one thing that we want to do first and foremost is do a quick audit on which ads that we're running, which ones would be in compliance, which ones might be questionable, and what, then once we know the specifics, then let's dive into what changes we might make.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. It's worth taking a few minutes just to kind of get a lay of the land. I would say you don't necessarily have to start making these changes just yet, because again, it's all sort of, it's all kind of still in the air a little bit. So we don't know exactly what's going to be allowed and what's not. So it's worthwhile to have an audit, maybe export, the ads that you're running currently, so you have a list and you can easily see them. And maybe once we know what's going to get banned and what's not, then you have a list you can make changes pretty quick. But I wouldn't suggest going in right now and starting to blow everything up.
No.
Because you may not need to do that.
Well, Meta may not make the change.
Exactly.
I mean, they've announced that they've slowly been rolling it out.
Right.
They've already announced that it's going to happen in January, but we all know that sometimes they change their mind and they don't tell you. And so it's just a matter of kind of waiting and seeing. But you should have a plan.
Yeah, you'll know when your ad is denied. They will tell you that part. But that's what I was saying, is maybe you can export it so you've got it handy and you can, you're just ready to make that change, but you're not necessarily dumping a ton of time into it preemptively just in case.
Yeah. I think another thing that you could start paying attention to is how you're measuring performance on ads. It's a good time to reframe the expectation, because if you were looking at super targeted and now you have to go more broad, it might change the way that you're going to measure success. And so starting to think and have those conversations with your agency, how are they going to report back to you? And what is going to be success for you? Because that might dictate the difference in, I might shift my dollars from this to this because this measurement of success no longer works for me.
Yeah, and again, that's something that's TBD, because just like what I was talking about a few minutes ago when this happened with Apple iOS and their privacy, essentially what Meta did is it created a new category of reporting where it said, essentially it was estimated conversions, because it couldn't tell you, yes, you actually sold this, but we think you might have. And so that was the new number. And so that is how a lot of agencies and practices started to report success, is say, well, we don't know if this is exactly right, but to some level of certainty, we got to have some faith in this number that it's right. So I would think they're going to carry that over here. But again, we don't know.
All right. Well, we'll just kind of take a wait and see approach.
Yeah.
But it's always good to understand what's coming down the pipeline, what it is that you need to make adjustments for, and start thinking about the future and how it impacts your strategy.
Right. Yeah. I think the big takeaway is that something is going to change. Your ads are probably going to be affected if you're in this space of, Botox for migraines or whatever. So knowing that you may need to shift strategy, either dollars to another platform or dollars to another type of campaign focused on impressions, that's probably going to be the first wave of changes.
That's right. And so with that, I'm Jennifer.
I'm Corey.
We'll see you next time on the Dr. Marketing Tips Show. Thanks a bunch.
Bye, guys.
If you want more like this, hit like and subscribe so you'll always be alerted to new episodes when they come out. And if you want information about us, visit us over at insightmg.com. That's insightmg.com. We'll see you on the next episode.